All right, everyone, this is Full Shock, and I am doing Corp is doing a replay review for Beach or Short Sea on Isthmus. So I'm not a naval player, but I wanted to have a breakdown of naval play for Mion here. So I enlisted Corp, who is a straight player and is a very good naval player, to talk through this with me. So that's the other voice that you will hear on here. So without further ado, let's get started. We're looking at Famion right here, who is the 10OS player. And he's going to open with Mex into Double Wind.
Yes.
Talk to me about this opening, K-Corp. How do you feel about it? Or sorry, Corp, how do you feel about it?
So yeah, you can see the build radius of the com. It's sort of able to touch both mixes here, but you can actually position a little bit closer to this area.
Mm-hmm.
And then generally you don't need to build two winds here before the third mix because it's such a long distance. You'll gain the energy anyway.
Right, because your comm produces 25 V a second. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So just move your comm down a little bit, and then you can just go double mex into wind, take the third mex, and then drop additional wind.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Awesome.
So then once you get over here, you pretty much want to scale up a bit of E because you need to give some wind to your air player typically on this map because they have to ferry a lot of transports and scouts and fighters and so on, and there's a risk of comm snipes and transports.
Okay, so at the start, you're asking units for your air player. What other units are you kind of asking for? Or what's your game plan here?
Yeah, so you want to ask for trans and scout, and you want to immediately ask for a con and res bot from this guy.
Okay. So just overview really quick. For your air player, you're going to try to give wind. You're going to ask for a transport and a scout. And then from your geo player who's below you, you want to ask for a con and a resbot. The resbot is to eat all of the trees around just so you can kind of smooth out your energy production. What are you doing with the con?
Yeah, so the construction bot or vehicle or whatever, you typically want to place a con turret either in your cluster of 3 mixes or over here is what I kind of prefer to do, and then do sections of wind just to scale your energy up. And then eventually when you get a T2 con, you can build another con turret and transport these over to the mixes over here, or just have the additional one there to boost the mixes out quicker.
Okay, and then I feel like this e-storage is too early. Do you agree, or would you ever need that much E early on?
Yeah, so I typically would build maybe like 5 wins, send the first 2 over to the air player, and then an LLT here for defense against hovers and raids. Leaks often come through here like really easily because it's quite a large area they have to defend early. And then I don't typically build an e-storage. I've seen some people do it if they're going to do like a comm trade where they want to stealth their comm super early on. Though generally that's kind of risky and not optimal, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, so I probably wouldn't do it unless you had like 5 of your wins plus the 2 you sent to the air player at minimum, and if wind is like super high at that time.
Right. So instead, you feel like, especially in this game specifically, the optimal start would be like max wind, max, and then say like 3 or like 4 or 5 wins, and then straight to your lab in the sea.
Yeah. Honestly, I might even just do the 3 mixes and then wind. I don't know if you need one right after this one. To be honest. I don't think you do.
Yeah, because it's such a long distance walking that your comm generates the E. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. If you're ever stalling, it's really nice on this spot. I don't know if this one has. Oh, yeah, I don't think it does. So on this spot, you actually get access to these plants here, which is really nice. So if you're ever e-stalling or whatever, you can just walk a short distance and suck a tree as you're going or whatever. That's quite nice if you need to finish something. If you really, really want the e-storage or whatever, like that's a good option to do it, or to finish the wins or LT or whatever. It's only if wind is at like 1. That's a bit rough. But yeah, generally you want to not build one of these because it takes like maybe 12, 13 seconds to make. And so you're just delaying your C start by that much time, which in turn delays all of these mixes by that much time. So you're actually losing quite a lot of income.
So in general, talk to me about beach or short sea, like what is your game plan for if you start in this position? What are you trying to do, like in an ideal world?
So yeah, generally like they updated the map a while ago and made the geo over here, and so it's in destroyer range. And there's a lot of land that people can attack with amphibs, sort of like off the land area. So you're basically on defense mode. So yeah, your general gist of this position is you're trying to defend and keep like these three players safe. Because like
Okay.
if you look at the GOC opening, right, they only have to defend a beach and this player, whereas you have to defend three players and you've got air directly behind you, and you're not really going to have defenses here. So this is kind of all wide open.
Okay. And then in terms of island, it's something that you have to contest, right?
Absolutely. So if you count the mixes, you've got four here, another four here, and then three up here. And if you look at Geo, or GOC, whatever it's called, you know, these and these over here. So these amount of mixes are the same for both players, right?
Hmm.
So you absolutely have to contest island, or you're going to be three mixes down.
Right. And then, yeah, you just get rolled by the
Yeah,
metal difference. Okay.
yeah.
And so
If you lose
that's
island, you're kind of just screwed.
right. And that's the goal of the transport is you're going to drop your lab and then you're going to fly the trans over and you're going to have the scout make sure that you're not going to get shot down by fighters.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Scout also very important.
Mhm.
Generally, you want to keep it alive and scout for fighters around here while your hearings come out and so on. But it's super, super important to do a scout of these three players because you want to see if this guy's opening hovers or what this person's doing.
right, because you need to
Because
adjust
then
on
you'd
the fly.
immediately need to like transition. Maybe you wouldn't even make a con trip if they're coming out super early or something, right?
Right.
Typically you can, but yeah, it all determines what you do after.
Okay. So he's going to walk to sea.
Mm-hmm.
He gave 2 wind and he only has 1 windmill generating, so he's at plus 41, which is a little rough.
Yes. Yeah. You definitely want a lot more income than that. I have seen people do similar stuff to this, but you'd typically do a lot of titles.
So
Maybe
does
like
he?
one title, then shipyard.
Is there a reason he walks that far to drop that shipyard, or could he have just dropped it earlier?
Yeah. So he could have dropped it probably like a second or two earlier. Less
Right.
com walking.
Mhm.
It's not massive, but for this position, because you have to transport over such a vast distance of sea, like it's extremely risky. So you got to go as early as possible.
Okay. And he did get a trans, so good job there. He doesn't have a scout, which is a little risky. Wait, is his
Yeah.
comm boosting or no? Ooh,
No.
okay. So yeah, he needed to shift. You have to shift queue that. You can just shift queue guard. You can shift queue it a little bit forward so that it starts boosting. How do you feel about this initial unit start? He opens con.
Yeah. So while the con ship is on the thing, you can queue it up with commands. I typically would open like 3 construction ships. You want to send the first one to here just to get their mix immediately up to there, and then maybe radar, maybe another radar out here. Then the second one you make to get this one, and then every game, absolutely you have to make like 1 to 2 radars here, so that you're protecting like or giving this much vision of amphibious units,
Right.
as well as air from like that sort of distance, right?
Right.
A lot of people on pond spots and so on will love to rush amphibious tanks up and generally try and just kill the geo here, which is pretty risky for this guy if he doesn't see it coming. But they're quite slow to move underwater, so if you spot it, you have a lot of time to react.
But hold on. So wait, do you open 3 cons or do you open dual herring before 3 cons?
Right, yeah. So typically I open 2 hearings myself because having the hearings come out here sort of like secures a good amount of area against aircraft coming in. And by the time that I've transported my com up here to take the mix and then fly over this sort of way, these will provide generally enough security, along with a scout coming up here to check if there's any hidden fighters in this sort of region.
Right. So the goal is essentially you want to get the two herrings out to protect your commander transporting to the island. So if the enemy air player sends a fighter, you can snipe it. And then right after that, you're going to immediately drop the 3 cons just to try to like build up your eco as much as possible.
Yep.
And then after that, do you feel like you want a supporter? Do you feel like you want an orca? Talk to me through the thought process of after you drop the 2 herrings, you drop the 3 cons. What follows that up?
Yep. So if I got a good scout off and I can see where these guys are starting, honestly, even it probably doesn't even matter. I'd probably just open a supporter, the small little fast ship that's got really good vision range, and you sort of want to run it. If you don't exactly know where his shipyard is at the start from lack of scouting or something, you want to check if he's over here and then sort of over here, and then just like patrol this sort of region so that you can see exactly where he starts. If he's over here, you can typically come around and like snipe one of the mexes if you got one of those early, and it's very good damage.
In your games, how common is it, do you feel, for people to do a shipyard in Cove versus on beach?
Almost every single game it's going to be Cove.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's beach, like they can defend their beach a lot more, and that's great. But then they're just down like all of these mexes. It's really, really hard for them to contest those.
Okay, so supporter comes in, scouts, you see, is there a shipyard there? If there are mexes there, you can snipe them. And then would you follow up with Orca to try to like fight the underwater mexes, or kind of what's the thought process
Absolutely.
there? Okay.
Yep. Orca's really, really good starting unit for this because it's unlikely they're going to rush a destroyer because it's extremely costly and they'll end up stalling on metal. Their first sort of goal is probably like 2 frigates or an Orca themselves to sort of try and counteract that. But this sea really, really, really needs to get these 2 mixes to sort of equalize, right? And so if you have a sub coming, then it can easily just snipe them. And yeah, they'll still be behind.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So, all right, that makes sense. And then do you ever do, so you talked about the 2 radars that you normally do, kind of one off of the geo a little bit and then one a little bit farther down. Do you ever try to do radars like a little bit deeper into the sea? Or do you feel like does the land there kind of block it? Do you feel like you just need those 2, or kind of talk to me about that? Or I guess you have units there that would see it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So typically for this one, you need to drop the radar like next to it immediately, so that you can sort of give warning like straight away to this guy. You absolutely need to get it up ASAP, as well as the one like sort of forward a wee bit. Um, Typically I'll make one over here just to like see if a sub is coming for a bit of early warning, so I can get something out on time before he kills 2 mixes. Force you to claim those 2, which is a bit unfortunate. Normally I don't make a lot more radars than that. Yeah, sometimes I go there just to get a bit of vision in this sort of region, but like
Mm-hmm.
the radars on sea are really expensive, right? They're 130
Right.
mil. It's not ideal to make one compared to the land one, right?
Yeah, the land ones are super cheap. You can just kind of throw them up wherever. Okay, that makes
It's
sense.
also like an extra 2-3 seconds extra build power for a commander to make. So it's like they're quite slow as well. It's really bad to make them. A lot of them they just die like one supporter just running by clearing them all out.
And then you're behind. So
Yeah.
in terms of when you move your comm and when you boost, would you boost the 2, you'd boost the 2 herrings out, and then would you boost out 1 con and then move your commander up to take? Or what, like how does that kind of interaction work?
Yeah, you can do a few different options. I don't know exactly what's better. It's probably better to boost 2. I think what I do is I boost 2 construction ships out to get this and this, that, and then boost the 3rd just to assist the lab and just do all further construction. And by that point, you should have pretty much used all your metal up. And then you immediately fly your comm over to this one, take the mechs, and then begin your journey to the island.
Okay. Perfect. Let's unpause. Yeah, let's unpause and go. So I think once after he takes, right, so he needed to pick his comm up here so that he gets to that mech faster, because walking is super slow and transports are vastly superior.
Yeah, the transport moves so fast.
Oh, he
It's
even
like each
yeah.
each second you're sort of wasting like walking this distance is a lot of metal lost, right? Eventually that's going to be a couple of ships.
Yep. Okay, and then he's going to drop this, and then he's going to hopefully pick up his comm. We'll see. So, really quick, if we pause, in an ideal world, he should have a con turret already in his base, and he should be spamming wind to scale his energy economy. And then the res bot would be eating all the trees near to kind of scale that as well, right? And then he'll also have a scout from his air player to make sure that there aren't fighters and to see if he's getting raided by hovers. And then he has the transport, which is a plus on his part. He knew he needed a transport to go to go there. The thing he's missing from the build, it looks like now, is he needs the herrings to protect the transport. And then for the cons, the first con's going to go right out. Will you have any of like the second con boost the lab or no?
Yeah, so I make the first two cons that immediately go to mexes, and then make a third, and then leave straight away. And the third just boosts the lab.
Okay.
So it's super important to just get your metal up as soon as possible, because like the shipyard alone drains 15 metal a second on a destroyer. Like it's quite bad.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah.
Like you can't even really boost it. So like making a con to just boost the lab straight away, not very good. You only use your commander there to boost it until you're like sort of out of metal, and then you just got to leave, or you're just sort of wasting build power that could be elsewhere.
Makes sense. Okay.
Another point would be the resbots really need to sort of prioritize the rocks, because the other players got all these. And so to equalize that, you have to eat these 3 sections, and then do the trees.
Right. Does
You
it make
typically
sense to
won't
like
get con
eat?
turret up by this point though.
Oh, okay. Does it make sense to eat? Like, would you immediately go eat those, or would you eat E until you start to M stall and then go eat the rocks? Or that's like a minor optimization, I guess. But
It's really tough. It depends on the wind and how many winds you built. Some
right.
people opt for more titles, which is a lot more metal heavy and a bit rougher, but then you could easily go for the rocks. Generally, wind isn't that bad, but if it is, you might want to stay on a small cluster of trees and then do it. But just always make sure you get them, or you're going to be really far behind.
Okay.
Like it's actually quite a lot of metal.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So he builds it. He's going to grab his comm. His comm's just going to float in the air, just chill, get a little relax. All right. So now he's sending it. Okay. Talk to me about, so that's kind of a weird flight path to me. What do you think is the optimal flight path to get to island? Where do you want to land, and sort of what's your plan for securing island with that? Ideally, he should have the scout to, see what's there and see everything else. But when you're flying to island, just kind of talk me through it.
Yeah, so typically once you go to this max, you want to just head over these 2 sunken island areas, because you can land your comm on these if a fighter comes and you can't defend against it. If a fighter's coming, it's going to be coming like around this sort of angle, so it'll be a bit delayed because you have like 2 herrings here. The 1 is fine. Some people just do 1. I like to do 2, just to have a lot of secure area. But yeah, you really have to fly over the islands. Typically when you're getting shot at, it's going to be over this area anyway. And then if it does come, you just immediately land and just walk.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is just so risky. Like you sort of don't know what could be coming.
Yeah, like his comp could just get sniped if if there was just a single fighter. Right.
We did go over these 2 islands, but it's just you're closer to their air player doing this. Like you really, really want to be as far out as possible.
So he's going to land forward, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite make any sense. You typically want to maximize your metal income in this game. Generally, you'd want to fly like sort of at this angle and then land up here like immediately. Or if there's something here already, like land as soon as possible, right?
Right. So
If
you
there's nothing,
you can abuse that cliff, right, to like minimize AA or no?
yes. Yep. So if there's already like an AA bot like that's been transported up here or a nettle or something, then you can definitely come over this way and it won't be able to shoot down. Because I don't think the nettles can shoot like super low, like below them. Like it
Yeah.
won't target something that's down here, but it'll target something that's sort of at level with it.
100%. Yep. So you can kind of abuse the terrain and sort of like hug the cliff, come up, and then drop. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, you'd probably want to land there, and then that allows you to get these two really quick, and then transport your comm once it's done, sort of to about here. Get that one. Maybe come over here, build a radar. Probably 2 nettles to stop a comm drop,
Okay.
and then a few LLTs and pork defense along here to prevent comm just walking up and degunning them. Generally, you want probably like 3 or 4, but I don't know. There might be too much. I don't know.
Okay.
Against better players, they can easily cloak and just degun, so it's kind of tough.
Right. So you kind of want them, you want like, yeah, that makes sense. You want like 3 to 4 ideally spread out so that they can't get degunned. And that would also protect against hovers too, if there weren't a lot of them, right? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, then
Perfect.
general game plan after that is sort of just make a section of wins and help scale your E while you're waiting for the T2 con that you'll eventually get, hopefully.
Right. So he could just have a super long build order here where he's like, all right, build these 3 mexes,
Yeah.
build 2 nettles, build a radar, build 4 LLTs, build whatever, 20 wins, and then maybe mix in converters there or something just to sort of maximize eco. But your commander has 300 BP, so it totally makes sense that you want him building 24/7 if he's not fighting. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. No, it's good here. Once you got this sort of defense up, you're pretty much, you can sort of just build queue this and ignore it until you get the T2 over here. Because the microing ships is a lot of micro. So you don't really have time to sort of go back and forth a lot of it.
Okay. So I have a question here. It looks like Mion did a good job. The supporter scouted Cove, and he also scouted the shore here, and there's no shipyard. So if you scout this and there's no shipyard, what are your options, or like what's kind of optimal to do in this situation?
Yeah, sure. So if that happens and he doesn't contest C, it's pretty much you've automatically already won the C. So he has to get all of these mexes to equalize with you being on island. And so if he doesn't do that, you just immediately come and pressure and take all of these mexes with your combot out here, which already have the radars up and so on. Maybe make an extra radar out here to see if like there's an amphibrae coming out this way or something. A lot of people like to do it as well. And then I'll probably make a couple of riptides only, and that's about it. And then you go destroy a herring, and you want to immediately start pressuring the front. So you'd immediately come up here, and you'd start to deny these mixes.
Right. And the idea is you're abusing the whatever 710 range of the destroyer, and then the ground units can't fight back, and so you can just kind of chip away. So if your destroyers go there, I guess one concern is if there's like a jammer and there's a cloaked con that can come up and degun it. But what else do you need to be aware of, and why do you have a herring?
Yeah, so the herring's just for vision range, so you can actually shoot targets and see what they are. You generally just want to see what's there.
Okay.
Your main goal in coming here, though, is sort of just to sort of skirt along here and then arrive here and then just kill this player. This player is extremely close to the sea. His mechs here can easily be denied, and then he's only got that one which can be denied and that one which can also be denied. So he would be stuck on 2 mexes.
Right.
And
That's
if
that's
their
misery.
lab's not like, yeah, they sort of need to build their lab like over here to maybe be out of range. It's kind of difficult placement to do all their like winds and eco and everything in this tight little area. But anything that they've built outside of that is just in range and just forfeit at that point.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, so C's uncontested. He's tapping island. Then he wants to send some destroyer or like a destroyer and a herring. Herring gives vision. He harasses with the destroyer and can kind of help control mid and help crush yellow, who's that frontline player there. And
Honestly,
then go ahead.
if I see this though, because he did scout this, I'd probably think that he's going for a C opening. Because I don't think it makes sense to build these if you were going for land or tech or something like that. You'd normally build like defenses back a little bit out of destroy range.
Right. So
And so
yeah.
I'd probably skip on going here immediately and just sort of try and make sure he doesn't actually get into the sea.
Ooh, okay. Do you, in a position like this, would you ever send like cons to build like stuff on on the land on their side, like either like cameras or anything else?
Uh, Typically, I'd prioritize you sort of just want to get the mexes and be ahead of them on income, and
Mm-hmm.
then radar and so on. And then you can look to do that if they're not contesting you, because you still don't know what they have. They could be
Right.
massing hovers or doing a lab over here that you haven't seen or something. Um, It's kind of tough. But if you've fully secured C, you have enough forces that like you've destroyed a bunch of this stuff. You know they're not going here. Then you could easily bring a con ship up that's done all of this, building these mixes, make either 2 con turrets, one. Honestly, you don't even necessarily need one in some cases. Then a dragon's more up here, or a beholder first to get vision, see if there's any defenses,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and contest the geo.
Oh, okay. Wait. And these are hovers coming out now, right?
Yes.
So, in terms of your reaction to hovers, so he sees the hovers coming. Ideally, what is his reaction as a naval player? Because generally speaking, hovers, in terms of equal metal, don't trade well into navy. So, does he need to make any adjustments, or like what needs to happen here?
So con turret's not overly necessary here. He needs to have a repeat command first of all on his thing. Immediately, I'd look at my shipyard and just probably put out like maybe 8 to 10 supporter ships, because you really need area control. The hovers are really, really, really good at running around and outflanking you and trying to go for different angles, right? And harassing your other players around you. So you need ships that can quickly respond to that
Mm-hmm.
and also give you a lot of vision and control.
Okay.
And you can't really do it with anything else because they're too expensive or slow. But yeah, I wouldn't be making urchins.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's no, if there aren't any, he went hovers. I guess maybe you could
Yes.
have made one before, but if you don't see a
Yeah, yeah.
shipyard, it doesn't make sense to build torpedo launchers that shoot ships
Yes.
because there's nothing to fight. Right. Okay. That, yeah,
Yeah.
that checks out.
Yeah. At this point, I'll probably just move my ships around to this area because it looks like he's playing from that side, right?
Right. Yeah. Because there's the torpedo launchers. So you just kind of assume that he wants to control the beach so that he can throw it on a
Mhm.
shipyard. And then you kind of want to hold that. And he has the mexes, and those mexes aren't being contested, which he's more or less 1C, right? He has a massive economic advantage. So this player went hovers. If you don't see hovers, do you just assume that he's teching, or like what's your thought process there?
Um, Generally, you just always want to scout. I don't really know how else you do it without scouts. You just seriously want vision and scouts. You probably wouldn't make the subs either. Um, you need to build care. It's pretty easy generally to run a scout aircraft over here, like and on like the side like this to get vision.
Right. And then you know what you're fighting. So if
Yeah.
you see him and he's teching, what
Mhm.
like what would your reaction be? So hovers, we kind of talked about like you'd want to get supporters and then try to stop them from raiding eco. But
Mhm.
in some of these lower TS games where people aren't as aggressive, a lot of times I think that
Mhm.
the C player might tech. So if you see him teching, what would your reaction be?
Yeah. So if I see him teching, then I've already got all of these maxes. I'm probably miles ahead. I'm probably double his eco at this point. And so I'd probably just immediately cut ship production. You don't really need ships if they're not making any offensive units, and ships are extremely expensive, slow, and kind of useless a lot of the time. The only like exceptions are destroyers, which can test the mexes that are available, right? You'd probably immediately buy a T2, build your second con turret here, transport that one there, and then boost these up as fast as possible. Just do your tech transition, all the T2 mexes that you can
Mm-hmm.
possibly get as quickly as you can, and then you want to raid them as fast as possible because
Right.
there's just no way they can match your income.
Okay.
So if you look at his income, it's 18. versus 36. It's quite rough.
Right. Yeah, it's just a massive difference.
Yeah.
Basically double. And then he sees the radar dot, which he's going to respond to. And that's what you're talking about there, where the destroyer can just start chipping away at all of that.
Yeah.
Sees
So these ships here, I would have already started going in, and you can, even with probably like just 3, maybe 4 of these ships here, and a hearing just as a vision thing, you can just easily kill these without even losing a ship.
In a comp like this, he should have res subs to repair and to do everything else,
Absolutely.
right? Like, okay.
Yeah, these res subs probably need to be over here and sort of on a repeat repair command in this sort of like region, or just manually clicking them and so on.
So
yeah, he should be far more aggressive here.
Right. Yeah,
You
he
can see
needs
you're
to
getting hit
just
by rocket
punish.
hoppers. They're not very effective.
Yeah, I mean, the rocket hovers can't hit you if you're moving, so he just needs to run up and hit him. So this is where you've already won C. If you were actively fighting C, what sort of unit comp would you actually want?
Yeah, so if I'm fighting C, typically you want a lot of frigates, few destroyers because they're very expensive, hearings, and res subs. Normally I'll go like 3 riptides, 1 destroyer, a hearing, and a res sub on repeat.
Okay.
Typically gives you tools to deal with pretty much anything.
Makes sense. So in an ideal world, he really should have been teching for this situation. Once he'd
I think
already
he could
kind of won
easily
C.
hit his T2. If you don't get it from this guy, then you can easily get it from Eco at this point as well. Probably
Right.
early enough.
And
Then you
so
got to transport.
in a 1C, as soon as you've won C, do you just ask for it, or is there like more of a timing? Like generally on, like, for example, like on lane maps at like 7 to 8 minutes, you're looking around and you're like, all right, who has T2? Who can I buy it from? Is there like a minute timing, or is it just like, all right, I won C, now let me go T2?
It's kind of complex. It kind of depends. Normally, a lot of people I see do it after 1 rotation of their build queue. So like 3 Riptides, Destroyer, Hearing, Res Sub, and then buy T2, like pausing the build queue or whatever. I like to just not buy it for like an extra minute or 2 and just get out another fleet and then try and out micro the opponent.
Okay.
But typically, it's good to get early, or it can be, unless you're against like a rush sort of comp.
So here he's already won C, but he's still pumping out quite a few ships. Granted, he probably wants some destroyers and some stuff to help with middle, like we talked about before. But I feel like in this situation, he needs to start transitioning. So teching is something that he should do, but how is he going to actually impact the rest of the game now that he's won C?
Yeah, so a major error here is he doesn't have any hearings to actually like utilize the range of the destroyer.
Right, he can't
so
see.
it only has 500 vision range, so yeah, it's not ideal. There's definitely too many ships. As soon as you win C, essentially like this, you sort of want to stop ship production immediately, boost your eco, or make a push play for like a land invasion as soon as you can. The earlier the transition, the more effective it'll be.
So when you do that transition, you're talking amphibious lab, and then talk to me about the choice between salamanders and poison arrows if you're core.
Yeah, sure. Typically you want to, you probably need about 500 E minimum to do like a land transition. So you need to have been scaling, and that's sort of the whole point of doing the scaling on the island and so on back here with the Contar as well. Generally you want to do salamanders because they're really, really quick and they can move across the sea really fast. You could do a forward lab, though I think it sort of delays you a little bit and it's a bit annoying to defend because making the con turrets around it is not ideal and they cost too much to make.
Right. Okay.
I don't know. I find it's kind of easy to just make maybe a couple of con turrets here. You probably need like 3 for your initial like base or whatever. That's fine. And then going into a land invasion like that. But typically you could probably look at going T2 ships first as well in order to scale your build power because the naval engineers are really efficient for build power. They're also like 3 times tankier and can move.
Yeah, so the the T2 naval engineers are Voyagers, and basically they're better than a con turret. If you guys aren't
Absolutely.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheaper, tankier, they move, they can build stuff. Same build power and everything. It's amazing.
And he should
I
have
like
eaten his
to
T1 lab here too, right? Or does he need both?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, you stop making ships and then just eat your labs. A lot of the time, I'll even eat my ships because they're kind of like, what are these riptides going to do from this point onwards?
Right. Yeah, they're not
Maybe
really going to do
defend against
much.
hovers, but like this guy's already on such low income, you could probably just make like the shipyard again and then 10 supporters before like it becomes an actual threat.
Right.
Or
Uh,
you have ships already. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
In terms of, so another thing, the e-reclaim in sea, is it something you can test? Is it not worth it? Because I know you have a resbot back on land eating. So do you need to fight for it, or like, yeah, how do you feel about the e-res or the
Yeah,
e-reclaim?
it's honestly not that great. Like the amount you get is like 25 E per second or something like that. It's quite bad for a res sub to do it. I think way more important is a res sub repairing ships and reclaiming stuff. The battle over reclaim and sea is like the whole game.
Right.
Like it
That's
can
what you really
determine who
have to
wins or
focus on.
loses really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. The build power of ships is quite low, which means that their repair speed is very high.
Right. And so that's part of why you want more
Yes.
recipes. Okay. So in a situation like this where his front has kind of fallen, if he goes Salas, he can raid. Maybe he could go poison arrow to kind of like help there. Would there ever be an option to go T2 ships like in the situation like this? Like, would you want to get missile ships or like destroyer, or not destroyers, what are they called? Battleships?
In this situation, I feel like the better choice would have probably been to bring most of these ships, split them into two. Like you only need a couple of ships to deal with hovers coming off here and to kill everything up here. And then probably should have just immediately killed this person. And it might have prevented this happening. Or
Right.
at least it would prevent the follow-up from it if like someone else can deal with it and stop the push.
Yeah, and even if you don't stop the initial push, you can kind of kill a lot of the reinforcing units,
Yeah.
and you can kill that guy's base, which is super important because you're losing frontline there. So if you can equalize it, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, indeed. I probably wouldn't go T2 ships. I feel like they're very expensive. They don't get a whole lot of payback, especially from this C player. You typically only have like this front person, which you can mostly already completely kill them with destroyers. And yeah, it's not ideal unless you're sort of fighting the other C still.
Okay,
Or if you need a taught bomber counter, because then you sort of have to go the flagships, which is unfortunate.
so all right,
Salamanders affect the game way earlier than ships can at T2, I think.
right, that makes sense. That, yeah, that totally. You just want to be aggressive. You just want to push through and start dealing damage, because if you're killing people, they have to respond to you, and they can't kill your allies.
Yeah.
So you said it makes sense. You're going to drop a T2 shipyard so you can get a con to upgrade mexes. Before you eat the T2 shipyard, I'm assuming you would want like at least one haven, one oasis, the anti-nuke ship, or do you build that later, or like you don't feel like you're really under threat of getting nuked at sea? Like, what's your thought process there?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of depends on the game and how it feels. It's kind of hard to say. Sometimes if you just want to get the raid off quicker, like it's absolute priority to do that, then maybe you just reclaim it without making it. But then like what if you need energy, then it's really good to get that instead because it's really fast build power for energy. I think it's probably similar to like a fusion in terms of like getting the energy quicker. Um, it's tough to say. You're not really at risk of a nuke. Generally, if people are nuking, they're going to nuke like the eco player, the air, or the geo player because they're much more important positions.
Mm-hmm.
And if they nuke you on sea, like they can hit here, they can hit here, or over here. Like your eco is very spread out, so it's not really worth it to nuke a sea player, I think.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because nukes are expensive. So they're going to spend more metal
Yeah.
killing the small stuff that you have in one of those places. Okay. Yeah.
If they go and nuke, they're setting themselves behind anyway. They kind of have to get some good value out of it.
So I think at this point, his build has kind of deviated substantially from what a bit more of an optimal build would be. We can watch a bit more, but I think generally speaking, in terms of improvements, the early game where dropping more wind right away, optimizing his comm placement, optimize small optimizations like building the shipyard closer, and then having a better queue where he opens double herring 3 con into supporter orca. Super important. Also, making sure that he uses his allies. So he wants a ground con, a res bot. If you're like the player here didn't open bots, is it cool to just go like double vehicle con instead?
Yeah, it's fine. It's not ideal, obviously, because it costs more and it sort of delays them, and they're a bit slower than Resbot and not as useful. Excuse
But
me, but they can always the con vehicles can always suck trees. I think they suck them at the same rate as a Resbot, which
okay.
is good.
And then you
But yeah,
want
you'd always
scout.
buy two.
Yeah, and then you want scout transport, get to the island as soon as possible, and kind of your main goal in this is you get the island and then you want to fight the mexes above Cove, or you want to fight for control of the mexes above Cove. If you, yeah, and then also the airplane that you have, it needs to scout. You need to see what your opponent is doing, and you also really need to look at Pond because you want to make sure Pond isn't doing some sort of hover cheese.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Pond is like a very flex spot. They can pretty much open anything.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then
it's because like your ships are so expensive, it's hard to just bring them all back for like 1 minute to come here and then reclaim them or chuck them into something else, right? Like
right.
you have to make the right choice by seeing what they have first.
Right. Yeah. You want to be proactive instead of
Yeah.
reactive. And then in terms of the radar positions, because you said that this sea you want to be defensive because you're kind of trying to protect 3 players. So you want a radar outside of the bottom mechs, correct?
Yep. Yeah, pretty much just straight on it. Just so that
Okay.
you can get vision there, and I always recommend a second one. So you're pretty much covered along against someone walking amphibs up the side that people can't see, then just killing your geo early.
Okay. So I think in general, he kind of had the correct idea. It was kind of a good game for him because he was more or less unopposed. The guy built a shipyard really late. So the best situation for this would have been had he scaled E properly, go T2 and get salamanders and then start raiding. When you get the salamanders, do you send them through like where the ships are there, or do you try to send them through middle, or like what's your in a dream world, what's your path, and like how do you use the salamanders to raid?
Yeah, that's kind of tough. I'd probably. It really depends on the timing, honestly, and if this guy's teched a lot and you haven't been able to touch him properly or anything, maybe his help or something. You really need a scout ASAP. He could also have like mine layers and so on here. It's good to drop a Juno over here if you can transport the combat over as well with your T2. Typically you go up this area though. It's pretty easy. There's not going to be a whole lot of defense here, especially if they've been denied all these mexes and you're double their income.
Right. Yeah. You just
And
have
then
way more metal
yeah,
and you can just kind of overwhelm it just in sheer mass.
yeah,
Okay.
and then like the pond players exposed to you, the ecos, and then air as well. So you get so many options just from coming up there. If you come up here, there's always going to be a lot of pork. Generally, if you've killed this player, it's not as bad, but there's still going to be a stream of units coming in, so it's not ideal. But it is an option if you can't manage to get past the defense on the beach. But at that point, I'll probably transition out of Salamander straight away.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think that covers kind of like the first 14, 15 minutes. So yeah, that was long, but thank you so much, Corp. I'm not a naval player, so it's interesting for me to kind of see the straight meta and then also see the specifics for this position. So yeah, I just want to say thank you. And I'll link the Discord thread in the YouTube video. So if you guys have questions, post it there. But I think we'll end it there. Do you have any like final thoughts, Corp, or anything else you want to say?
I don't know. Oh, that's probably it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.